Okay, we'll go with Jordan first from esports.gg.
Hey, thank you for taking time for this interview. My question is in regards to academy players, and given how well they've been performing at this tournament, do you think there's like an opportunity for Riot to maybe like, add academy rosters to lock in next year? Obviously it'd be dependent on if teams can fill both of their start and academy rosters, but I just want to hear your thoughts on like the opportunity.
I mean, I think sometimes people's perception of academy players or just players not in the LCS can be skewed. I mean, I think that being in LCS and considering yourself a top player or top LCS player rather than someone who's like on the lower end or even in academy is just your level of consistency. And that's really hard to measure and it's really hard to gauge as well, especially as a viewer. Because for example, I mean, if you take a look at last year when FlyQuest Academy subbed in their academy roster, they came out the gate smashing and looking really well in best of one games. But as time progressed, you could clearly see there was still a lot of holes and gaps that they needed to work on. And I don't even think they ended up making playoffs, you know? I just think that sometimes it's, I mean, I do, to answer your question, I do think that, I don't think Riot should do anything specifically to like add an academy team to the LCS necessarily, but I just think that we have to give more trust to management or like coaching staffs and things like that on teams to see the talent that they have and they field and that they get in the offseason and to give those players who deserve it a chance.
Thank you for your time.
Next question goes to Digon.
Hey, Revenge. I kind of just wanted to, I think Jordan's question was actually really good, and I wanted to double down. What does give a chance mean? How long do you think we should be waiting for players to develop, to make it? Because a lot of conversation I've seen recently is that development isn't linear. And so what do you think it should be?
Well, what a lot of people don't see behind the scenes is people play scrims, you know, and teams oftentimes will put in academy players in scrims or give them chances that way and see how they play in like a 5-game setting that's not as stressful. It's obviously like not on stage, you know, it's in a more comfort zone. And if players can't perform in that environment, then it's really less likely that they'll be able to perform, for example, on an LCS or in a really high stakes game, right? So I think that it does seem strange sometimes the decisions that are made and you know why certain decisions aren't being made, but a lot of times things are happening behind the scenes, whether it be, you know, clashes in player personality, for example, or like just not being able to play certain champions in scrims, which is going to heavily affect the draft that you might see on stage, right? There's a lot of like small things that go into the question or like the answer of like or like the question of why is this academy player not playing right now on the main team, or why is this academy player not in LCS yet? And you know, I think I do think that the system isn't perfect, but it's also not terrible right now. I just think that it's not always going to be easy to see it from an outside perspective.
Right. And I think I appreciate you expanding on that, because a lot of time, you know, we don't get the, you know, the more detailed answer. So appreciate it.
Mhm. Yeah.
Next question comes from Kenneth from Upcomer.
Hi, Revenge. I guess just piggybacking off the other questions too, you mentioned that there were certain things that you felt about the academy and the LCS system that were a bit imperfect. Do you mind elaborating on that and any of the personal imperfections that you see and ways that you think it could be better?
I just think that oftentimes there are people or like there are staff sometimes in academy that don't do the best at growing certain players. I think that that's always going to be an issue when looking at like the broad scope. Like I just think that developing a player right now is not really an easy thing. It's still something that I see as like in its infant phase, especially in North America, because I think that it's really important that, for example, like ex-pro players or really experienced people in the scene are kind of littered everywhere on all teams. But I think sometimes that's still not always the case. And it's really hard to find the perfect fit to coach a certain player, for example. Like some people need to bounce between team to team to finally find that culture fit, that certain coach that really gets them, to grow and to develop. I think that's just the reality. And I think that oftentimes it's going to be really dependent and kind of on like where you land and like the situation that you're in. I know that I was a bit outspoken when I first joined the academy system that I didn't have the greatest situation in academy, and it kind of was just bad luck because of like some of the things that were going on. But I found myself later, a year later on Immortals, and I had a really great coach, Andre Guijoto, who was really, really helpful in helping me develop really fast. And I always ask myself, like, what if I found myself in a situation where I didn't have Guijoto? It was kind of lucky. And I think that can happen for a lot of players in a lot of different ways. And yeah, that's what I see the flaw as, but I don't really know what a solution to it could be. We just need a broader scene and more time.
Thank you so much. Great answer.
Thank you.
I have another question if that's okay. I guess if no one else is raising their hands.
I was just about to ask if you had another one. so go
Okay.
for it.
Cool. So I wanted to shift away and ask you more about the meta and in general. Since you're a top laner yourself, I was wondering how you felt like the new TP changes were affecting the way that you would play and the competitive meta overall, and just like your overall thoughts about it. Thanks.
Sure. I didn't think initially that it would have as big as of an impact that it did, but that's also because the TP change was coupled with other things as well. Even prior to the TP change, top lane was already struggling to be as powerful, in my opinion, as bot lane at the moment. Certain bot lane champions and just bot lane combinations are just really strong scaling, and games are generally slower because of that, because you need to play for your scaling bot lane, or like bot lanes are going to scale regardless, right? So exploding the game on the other side of the map at the expense of giving the enemy scaling bot lane a lead is always going to be detrimental right now because of how
Mhm.
strong the bot lane champions are. That being said, the TP change was kind of, the way I see it, a even bigger stop holder for top lane to be a more explosive role right now, because I think that it gives you less influence on the other side of the map. Pre 14 minutes, which is huge. That's honestly the biggest detriment right now to the TP change for top laners, just using their early lead, pre 8 minutes or even like pre 10 minutes to like do something on the other side of the map, which
Yeah.
would usually be game breaking and like game exploding, right? But right now we just see a huge lull in the first 14 minutes of the game, even when top laners are getting a really, what would be usually a really huge lead that they can
Yeah.
transition elsewhere faster, right? So it's a combination of those two things that kind of makes top lane a lot more of this island right now, and kind of, I want to say less influential on kind of winning you the game versus bot lane. I just think bot lane right now is very important to win lane, or like to be in a winning position out of lane to be able to carry later on.
Thank you so much.
Then our last question comes from Digon.
Nah, it's like just a quick two-parter because I just have like a follow-up there. Do you think we'll see more different summoner spells in the top lane instead of TP?
No, because I think TP is still too strong out of lane, and I think that it enables too much playmaking inside lane that is just macro breaking if you don't have it on certain situations. Although I do agree, if certain champions that do take combat summoners top lane that make lane phase too hard to survive, you have to match those combat summoners, and we are seeing some of those champions come into meta, like Tryndamere, for example.
Yeah,
But usually
and then
you need to take TP.
And then the last thing was just about today. It's the lock-in tournament, but you didn't come away with results that you wanted. But what was the biggest takeaway that you walked away from your first day of matches?
Biggest takeaway, it's a bit hard because, it's still a lot to process from the games we just played, but just think it's good to see, the transition from scrims to stage, on our team, and just kind of understand that, you know, there's certain like small things we could work on, especially with communication and with planning that maybe falters on stage. But I'm not too worried or anything. I think that it does suck that we didn't get a win today. When I consider the two teams we versed today much weaker than the future opponents we have with TL and EG. But, you know, it's still lock in, and I know we haven't even been scrimming for too long yet. Most teams haven't, and I'm pretty hopeful on in the direction that we're heading, at least to be a really good team. So I'm not too, I don't think there's huge takeaways just today, but just hopeful still that things will be better in the next couple of days.
All right, thank you. That wraps up for our scrim. We appreciate you taking out the time to talk to us.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you guys for having me.
All right, have a nice night.
Thank you.